When it comes to orange cats in media, there's one who reigns supreme. You love his shows, you love his comics, but do you know his video games? Today, we're going to talk about Heathcliff's games on the Nintendo.
Licensed game hell.
Although Heathcliff launched his first foray into video games in 1984 with Heathcliff Fun with Spelling for the Atari 8-bit home computer and the Commodore 64, I couldn't figure out how to play that on a contemporary computer, and unlike those dumbass children it was made for, I already know how to spell. So again, we'll only be covering Nintendo systems in this video. Our hell actually starts in 2010 with the release of Heathcliff Frantic Photo for the Nintendo DS. Frantic Photo is a spot the difference game and is not much other than frustratingly difficult. Over the course of 40 levels, you spot the difference between a rotation of around 120 different Heathcliff images, with every 10th level being a whack-a-mole style game where you tap on the mice to catch them. A good score in this gives you one of 4 power-ups: an hourglass that resets your timer, a magnifying glass that reveals one of the differences, a jug of milk that solves the puzzle, and a fish that doesn't do much of anything. But if you forced me to guess, I think maybe it gives you a little more time. This game is, pardon the phrase, absolute dog water. The illustrations are just repurposed Heathcliff comics and aren't consistent in style across the game, with some being in color and others in black and white. And although I enjoy looking at Heathcliff illustrations, these are compressed in a way that reads bad JPEG from 2010 more than a classic comic illustration. Also, because they're already compressed for the little tiny resolution of the DS, you don't get the captions, which takes away a lot of the charm of Heathcliff. But, don't worry, the fun doesn't end when you beat level 40. You unlock a small array of extras, including a gallery with the images you've solved, unlimited replays of Whack-A-Mouse, and, most importantly, a little drawing/coloring software that is just okay. You can import images from your gallery and draw over them, or edit them to your heart's content. Or you could also just draw your own over a blank canvas. My biggest gripe with this section is that there's no layer system, so if you just wanted to color a Heathcliff, you have to have the patience of a saint. And let us not forget the difficulty. I settled in for a cozy night of awful games and hit easy mode, only to struggle to complete a single puzzle. The solutions range from obvious things like color changes and missing arms, to a single extra window on a background building, or one crosshatch line being longer than the rest. Funnily enough, after struggling to complete puzzles in easy mode, I switched to the normal difficulty and found the puzzles 100% easier, which also leads me to believe that the game isn't put together quite right. About the only credit I'm willing to give this game is that it features a so bad it's hilarious Heathcliff face that you have to stare at every time you open the in-game menu. It's so ridiculous, I can't help but imagine they knew the game was a wash in development. Look in his eyes and tell me anyone thought this was going to be a great game. All things considered, Heathcliff Frantic Photo is, at its best, a lazy attempt at cashing in on the Heathcliff IP by taking the most boring game style and sending it out to the public. I don't know who this is for. I didn't know who Heathcliff was when I was 10, and the pedantic solutions to the puzzles make me doubt kids would like or even be able to finish this. And I doubt any adult would reach for an I Spy game that is as boring and pointless as Frantic Photo. 0 out of 5 stars. But don't worry, Heathcliff doesn't spend long outside of the video game sphere, because in the same year, we got Heathcliff the Fast and the Furriest for the Nintendo Wii. The Fast and the Furriest is Frantic Photo's better-looking fraternal twin. The second installment in the 2010s Heathcliff video games, The Fast and the Furriest is a racing game where Heathcliff races against his mind-controlled buddies to save his girlfriend Sonia from the aliens that have abducted her. I'd tell you more about the story if you could, actually place higher than 5th place in any of the first races. When you skip past the little comic giving you the backstory and get into the gameplay, you're met with one of the most unfair games I've ever played. From the get-go, you're at a disadvantage because Heathcliff isn't able to accelerate as fast as his fellow racers, and you're already in a game of catch-up. Catch-up. Oh yeah, you can't catch up. The second the other racers are out of sight, you're at exactly where you'll be for the rest of the race. Unless Chauncey happens to come from behind, then you're in dead last. Items are useless unless you're near the other guys, and even if you hit every single speed boost, you aren't able to catch up because the computer is a cheater. Speaking of the computer cheating, even if you're able to get ahead early, at about the second turn of any given track, all the other racers get a speed boost. And you go right back to 5th place, where you belong. This makes progressing in the story nearly impossible. When I decided to play this, I thought I was in for maybe an hour or two of racing, followed by a pleasant evening of never having to play Heathcliff the Fast and the Furriest ever again. Instead, I was 2 hours in and hadn't placed higher than 5th place. This game sent me into pure gamer rage, and it never got better. I'd like to say I went back and finished it so I could explain the whole plot to you, but unfortunately I have to defer to a review from diehardgamefan.com. Story/mode rating: poor. Ultimately, the biggest sin that the Fast and the Furious commits is being a motion-controlled racing game. I was ready to give it the benefit of the doubt because I was playing this through totally normal and legal means and also using a Switch controller mapped as a Wiimote, so my first experience was hot garbage. Then I connected my Wiimote, and believe it or not, it got worse. On top of the unfair gameplay, having to use motion controls to move destroyed my will to live. The diehard game fan and I come to similar conclusions. Hell is real, and it's Heathcliff the Fast and the Furriest. This is the same game as Frantic Photo. It's the same home screen, it's the same gameplay, it's even the same stone Heathcliff. Heathcliff Spot On thought no one would notice, but I did, and I still played it to completion because I have no sense of self-love, and, all things considered, it's actually better than Frantic Photo. Spot On doesn't suffer from the messed up difficulty of its predecessor. When I hit easy mode, it played like easy mode. They even tried to put in the effort to color some of the black and white photos from the previous entry. And although they don't look good, I'd like to imagine that using the paint bucket tool to color Grandpa Nutmeg's cardigan kept at least one person employed. Is it a good game? Absolutely not. It's just Frantic Photo with some quality of life improvements that bump it from a 0 to maybe a 1 out of 5. Heathcliff should just stick to the comics. It was fun to go and play terrible games, but that's exactly what they are, terrible games. With the 2010 twins, the difficulty was insane, and even the creative merit I wanted to give the Fast and the Furious for at least attempting a story is overshadowed by the fact I wasn't able to progress through the story on my own. There's so little in the world of Heathcliff gaming that they didn't even bother to make a third game. They just tweaked one that already existed and called it a day. They couldn't even make a halfway competent kart racer, something the other orange comic strip cat has done twice. And it's a huge letdown for anyone looking to explore the breadth of what can be done with a character with as long of a history as Heathcliff. They squandered an opportunity for a fun beat-em-up or even a cheesy platformer, something with at least some creative merit and opportunity to be looked upon fondly. Instead, they gave us uninspired puzzles and weak racing games. And I can't say it enough, it's disappointing for fans of the character and people with basically decent taste in media. Maybe hell is the world we've created. Maybe hell is Heathcliff games.